Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody, and welcome in to the Philly Sports Power Hour on Thursday, January 11th, 2024, as we get ready for the Philadelphia Eagles playoff matchup against the Tampa Bay Bucks. It's the playoffs, baby. Trying to get myself fired up, man. I keep saying it every time I start this show. I cannot remember us getting ready for the playoffs for the Philadelphia Eagles and this being the vibe around the city. Not saying we're wrong. Not saying the fans are wrong for this being the vibe. It's just crazy how quickly this thing fell from all of us, or a majority of us, expecting another Super Bowl run to now fans have just checked out. They don't even care about this playoff game. If you guys follow me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, which we're also live right now, Twitter, I post multiple pieces of content a day. And I've been posting some things about the matchup with the Bucs, and we'll get into it on the show today and tomorrow and Monday. And people don't care. I have people messaging me saying, give up, bro. Season's over. Can't ever remember that when we still have a playoff game in front of us. But welcome into the Philly Sports Power Hour. We're streaming live on the JAKIB Sports Network. We are also live on TikTok. Make sure you guys hit that like button for me. Hit that share button. Make sure you're following all social media platforms. I see a bunch of my Power Hour crew checking in. But we got a great show scheduled for today. I want to talk about some coaching changes, some crazy news over the last 24 hours in the coaching world. We had 2 overtime games last night in Philadelphia. One went well, the other didn't. And then obviously we'll get into the Philadelphia Eagles. And like we are joined every Thursday, our Thursdays with my man, Mark Farzetta. So he'll be joining the show later on. But let me get a little bit of a roll call from the Power Hour crew. I see a bunch of you guys here, and I appreciate you. Jason A-Team, Forte, Flexin' and Steppin', Jimmy Wen, Batch, David Laprati, Philly 007, Antonio King in the house. Wine Niners Wine, always giving us the Philadelphia Flyers shout out. Ringo Island, freezing in Tampa. Ringo, what's the weather supposed to be on Monday, man, in Tampa? I'm seeing rain, like over 90% chance of rain. Let me know in the chat. Mike Fittery, Big D, The Real RMP, Daz, WC, BJJ, Bobby Murphy. Good to see everybody. If I missed you, I apologize, but thanks for being here for the hour. Love spending this hour with my Power Hour crew. And I see them saying heavy rain on Monday. I don't think that bodes well for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'd rather see a nice weather game, but maybe it'll help trying to defend against Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but we'll continue to break down that matchup. But before we get into the Philadelphia Eagles, let's talk about some of these coaching changes over the last 24 hours, and we are talking about absolute legends. Whether you've liked Nick Saban or Pete Carroll or Bill Belichick, you cannot deny that they are 3 of the best coaches we have ever seen in football. You may never see a college coach like Nick Saban again. What he was able to do with Alabama over the last few years has been remarkable. And I think Saban is getting out because the entire landscape of college football is changing. I knew everybody expected Saban to retire eventually. Didn't expect it to be this soon, and I think he looked around with all the changes that are going on in college football, with the NIL and the transfer portal, and he said, you know what? I'm good. I'm 72 years old. I've had a ton of success. I'm good. So then the question gets raised, well, who replaces Saban in Alabama? And I see some people in the chat saying Lanning's going to Bama. I've seen some people talking about James Franklin going to Alabama. But obviously, the destination for a lot of coaches would be head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And my producer, Xander, went to Alabama. So had to console him this morning. Our Bama people love Nick Saban. I have a couple of friends, in addition to Xander, who are Bama people, and they were on the verge of tears last night with Saban walking away. But you look at the NFL. We're talking about Nick Saban being a legend in the college ranks. Well, look at the NFL, and two legends are walking away, one bigger than the other, in Bill Belichick. Something we've been talking about on this show for weeks now. And not a surprise. I said it a few weeks ago, and I'm sure all of you guys thought the same thing, that there would be no way that the Patriots announced that they had fired Bill Belichick, that it was going to be a mutual parting of ways. And that's exactly what happened, as it should. I'm not a huge Bill Belichick fan, but there's no denying that the guy is a legend. And I think he earned the right and he deserved the right to not be, quote unquote, fired from the New England Patriots. So they part ways. So a couple of questions now. Who replaces him in New England? One name immediately jumps to mind, and that's Mike Vrabel, who just got let go by the Tennessee Titans. Could be a perfect fit for the Patriots bringing in Mike Vrabel. But the bigger question is, what does Bill Belichick do? Now, you see Nick Saban walking away at 72 years old. Bill Belichick will be 72 years old when next season starts. Does Belichick still have more coaching left in him? I think you have a guy like Belichick. I think he will coach until he dies. He doesn't strike me as the type of guy who wants to retire, wants to walk away, wants to join the media. Can't imagine Bill Belichick sitting on pregame shows with Terry Bradshaw and Tony Gonzalez. Doesn't strike me as the type of guy that's going to do that. So I do think Belichick will continue to coach. And I see Flexen and Steppen in the chat talking about the Commanders. And you know Josh Harris. We know Josh Harris very well in this city because, unfortunately, the owner of the Commanders also owns the Philadelphia 76ers and the New Jersey Devils. Something that I still think is a major violation, but I think I'm the minority in that. I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, he's just a businessman. I don't like it. I don't like that a guy could own the Washington Commanders and also own our 76ers. To me, that's a violation. But we know Josh Harris, and we know he would love to bring in a guy like Bill Belichick. So could we see Bill Belichick in the NFC East next season? Possible. But if I'm Bill Belichick, and I said this weeks ago on this show, before the Los Angeles Chargers moved on from Brandon Staley, I said, look out for the Los Angeles Chargers. For me, the Chargers are a team that makes a lot of sense for Belichick. A lot of sense. Good young quarterback in Justin Herbert. Some playmakers on the defensive side of the football. I could really see Belichick going to L.A. and trying to make a run with the Chargers. The issue with the Commanders is, does Belichick have faith that Sam Howell's the guy? Because you know, in this league, I don't care how good of a coach you are, it is almost impossible to overcome bad quarterback play as a head coach. You can't do it. You see what the Cleveland Browns are doing, which is amazing that they're on their 5th quarterback, but they're getting good quarterback play from Joe Flacco. But even the great Bill Belichick couldn't survive bad quarterback play from Mac Jones. So will Belichick go to a team like the Washington Commanders? I think it all depends on what his thoughts are of Sam Howell. And there's another team that keeps getting brought up, and I see it in the chat from David Laprati Jr. talking about the Atlanta Falcons. They just moved on from Arthur Smith. But again, does he have faith that Desmond Ridder is the guy? And I don't think Belichick at 72 years old wants to draft a quarterback, hope that that quarterback is going to develop into a franchise quarterback. Belichick's going to want to win now. He's going to want to step into a situation where you add a few pieces maybe to the defensive side of the ball and you make a Super Bowl run. Now, one team that immediately comes to mind about adding a few pieces to the defensive side of the football would be the Philadelphia Eagles, but I want no parts of Belichick. I'm sorry. I don't. Not that he's not a great coach, but you heard me say it before on this show. I don't think the Patriot way will work in today's NFL anymore, especially when you don't have one of the greatest leaders of all time at the quarterback position, Tom Brady. I know a lot of people hate Tom Brady, but you cannot deny the guy was a tremendous leader. So I don't want Belichick. But do the Commanders, do the Falcons, do the LA Chargers? Keep your eyes on the Chargers. That's what I could see as a good landing spot for Bill. And then you have Pete Carroll with an emotional farewell yesterday, said he wanted to keep coaching, but him and Seattle discussed he's going to move into a senior role. Maybe I've seen some conflicting reports. Maybe he is going to be with the team. Maybe he's not. But as good of a coach as Pete Carroll is, I don't see him doing anything after this. Unless he goes and becomes a D coordinator somewhere, I don't think you'll see him as a head coach anywhere else. He's getting up there too. But let's get away from the NFL for a second. We'll jump back in when we bring Farzy on the show. I want to talk about two Philadelphia teams that went to overtime last night. The Flyers win, the Sixers lose. Let's take a look at the Sixers. They play another game without Joel Embiid. They lose their 3rd straight in overtime to the Atlanta Hawks, 139-132. Not a bad game by Tyrese Maxey. Puts up 35 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds. Tobias Harris puts up over 30 points and 10 rebounds. But Trae Young and the Hawks win it in overtime. Trae Young puts up 28 points, 11 assists. Questionable call late against Maxey. Nick Nurse and Maxey weren't happy. They thought he was fouled. But they lose that game. It's their 3rd straight loss. It's tough to win without Embiid. Greatest player in the world right now, Joel Embiid. But I still think this team is missing that 3rd piece. And we'll see what happens as the season progresses. But another team played in overtime last night, and that was our Philadelphia Flyers. And the Fly Guys came out to the Montreal Canadiens last night. Go down 2-0 early. They were dominating the first period. If you guys watched that game, they were dominating the first period. Unfortunately, the Canadiens had 2 shots, and both of them went in. But the Flyers showed some real resiliency last night. Their first win after being down 2-0. And they were down 2-0 early. Great comeback. Owen Tippett gets a goal. Morgan Frost on the power play with the assist from Jamie Drysdale. New defenseman that they just acquired in the Cutter Gauthier debacle. We'll talk a little bit about that with Farzy as well. But that's the 3rd straight game now that this power play unit has scored a goal. That's been an area they've struggled. We know how good they've been on the penalty kill, but they've really struggled on the power play. But 3 straight games with a power play goal. They finished the 4-game homestand 2-1-1. Very good because they were starting to lose some games in there. They had lost 7 of 9. They were 2-4-3 in their last 9 games. So let's hope they can get back in the winning column. And you take a look at this Philadelphia Flyers team. We are now officially halfway through the regular season. It's an 82-game season. Flyers have played 41 games. So it's no longer a small sample size. This team is playing hard. This team has a real shot to bring NHL playoffs back to South Philly. If the season ended today, they're in the playoffs. Through 41 games, they have 48 points. It's the most points they've had since the 1920 season. And it looks like this Jamie Drysdale that they got for the Cutter Gauthier trade is going to be able to contribute to this team. You saw it last night. A lot of skill from the defensive position. Going to add to that power play. So I'm excited about the Flyers. And after the game, John Tortorella made clear at his press conference he wanted everyone to know that what happened with Cutter Gauthier had nothing to do with Kevin Hayes. If you're following the drama, a reporter said on his podcast, this has Kevin Hayes' fingerprints all over it. Well, Twitter took it and ran with it. Kevin Hayes is getting death threats. People are talking about his brother who passed away. Just really nasty stuff. So Tortorella wanted it known last night that this had nothing to do with Kevin Hayes and that Kevin Hayes is a great man. But what the hell happened? And I've been watching some of the NHL postgame shows. They were talking about it. Nobody knows what caused Cutter Gauthier to not want to be a Philadelphia Flyer. The speculation maybe is he just had a good freshman season at Boston College. A lot of these college players want to sign a contract now, continue to play in college so they could basically burn a year off of their first deal. And the Flyers organization was going through a state of change. They had an interim GM before they named Danny Briere, before they brought in Keith Jones. So was it that? Was that the reason he didn't like all the change? But then to refuse to talk to guys like Danny Briere and Keith Jones, who are very respected in the NHL community. These are guys who are respected. And for this kid to refuse to talk to them, surprising. And I said it yesterday, just can't wait until Cutter Gauthier and the Anaheim Ducks come to Philadelphia. But guys, I know we're not all Flyers fans, but I have to talk about our Flyers. There's something we can be positive about because there's not a lot of positivity around this Eagles team as we get ready for the playoffs. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we will be joined by my man, Mark Farzetta. Talk a little Flyers, a little Sixers, but mostly Philadelphia Eagles, and try to get some excitement built for a playoff game. We have a playoff game on Monday, but doesn't feel like it. So hit that like button, guys. Hit that share button. Stay tuned. We will be right back with Mark Farzetta.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back into the Philly Sports Power Hour on this wonderful Thursday as we get ready for the playoffs. The vibes are so good in the city for this Eagles team. Can't remember a time we got ready for the playoffs with the vibes like this, but I'm hoping maybe Mark Farzetta could get us fired up for the playoffs, like we are joined every Thursday by my man Farzy. What's going on, my brother?
Are we going Polly Pom-Poms today? Do we got to be optimistic and really excited about what's going to go down Monday? Is that what we're doing today?
I'm trying, Farzy, but it is hard. I'll tell you, I post a bunch of content on my Instagram and my TikTok, and I have people messaging me telling me, your page is going to trash, bro. All you do is talk negatively about the Eagles. What do you want me to say about this Eagles team over the last 6 games that would be positive? I don't understand what people want.
I don't understand. I will never understand the people that say what a team is going bad, that a sportscaster, a talk show host, whatever the case may be, is too negative. Are we being negative, or are we kind of reporting the news? Are we being negative, or are we saying what the team is doing when the team is not doing things well? We don't desire negativity. We desire honesty. And if the honest take is saying that the team is doing bad things, then you lose all credibility when you start being Polly Pom-Pom. So I will never understand when people are like, you're too negative. I'm like, am I? Or am I just kind of saying what's happening here? Because I can't be positive about a team that continues to do bad things.
And trust me, I've said this on this show, and I'm sure you would agree with me. This is a hell of a lot more fun when the Eagles are winning and they're going on Super Bowl runs. We don't want the team to play bad. Yeah. We both bleed green. I want to see this team do well.
Yeah.
But listen, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we all want the parade. We all want the party. I mean, one of the crazy, when the Phillies won the World Series in 2008, I looked around. I was right on Broad Street, just below City Hall. I was right in the thick of things, and I just remember looking around thinking like, oh my God, everything that like my father told me, older relatives, older friends of mine told me about championship parades in Philadelphia, they undersold it. And they only said it was one of the greatest things ever, one of the best days of their lives and all that stuff. And then there I was in 2008. And then there I was, of course, in 2018, after the 17 season, all that stuff after the Super Bowl. And I'm looking around and I'm like, this is incredible. I want this all the time. I strive for that. I root for that. I want to be a part of that. I don't want to be bitching and moaning, talking about obvious things that my team's not doing because they don't find it in the, they don't, what is it? They want to win, but they want to win their way. That doesn't make sense. There is no your way to win. There's a way to win. And when you start trying to square peg, round hole it just to be something that you really, we like to win by throwing the football. Okay, but if running is working, then do it. If throwing is working, then do it. It's just, that's where I think the Eagles can't get out of their own way.
I agree. And before we jump into the Eagles, because I do want to talk to you a lot about this Eagles team and the matchup on Monday night, because there is a playoff game, although it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the Philadelphia Flyers. You know that I'm a big Flyers guy. You're a hockey guy as well. And I haven't had a chance to talk to you about the big news, surprising news that came out this week, that the Flyers had to trade Cutter Gauthier because he refused to play in Philadelphia, refused to talk to Danny Briere or Keith Jones. Tortorella made clear last night this had nothing to do with Kevin Hayes. He said in his post-game press conference he was angry that was reported.
Yeah.
But what the hell happened here, Farzy? What do you think's going on with Cutter Gauthier?
I don't know. I really wish I did know. I wouldn't be shocked if it was somebody poisoning the well, because it was quite the about face. If you look at Cutter Gauthier when he first worked out with the Flyers and he saw John Tortorella, and I don't know if you saw that story where he pushed the person out of the way that John Tortorella was talking to, and he was like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Cutter Gauthier. I'm really happy to be here. Really excited to be here. I absolutely can't wait to play for the Flyers. Blah 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 blah. And it's really damn good to meet you." And John Tortorella was like, F yeah, man. I love that kind of energy. I like that type of enthusiasm. And then all of a sudden, for him to go from that to I don't want to be here. I don't want to. I don't want to be a Flyer. Don't make me a Flyer. I'm not signing. Is quite frankly the biggest about face you could have. I mean, it's along the lines of a J.D. Drew as we experienced in 96, 97, I want to say it was. But it's a really odd thing. So I wouldn't be shocked if there was a morsel of truth to the idea of Kevin Hayes poisoning the well for anything that would have happened between Gauthier and the Flyers. What I'm also amazed by is that he's a 6th overall pick, and nobody knew about this until it happened. Nobody heard about anything negative until after the fact. Okay, if you're the Flyers, you're very happy about that nothing leaked out, but nobody was kicking the tires on this. Nobody was trying to gauge interest from either side. And I get Danny Briere's point of we're glad that it didn't get out, and B, we're also glad that we kept it so close to the vest, because if it does get out, then that kid is ruined. There's just no chance whatsoever that he plays for Philadelphia. To me, it's an unfortunate thing, because I think the Flyers are trending in the right direction. And I think they are going to commit. If they're good, they're going to be good, but it's going to be by happenstance. It's not going to be because they're going to go out and acquire players. They're going to grow talent. They're going to, continue to have guys like Travis Konecny, not that he's young anymore, be a good leader. Sean Couturier, be a good leader. Scott Lawton, be a good leader. You're going to continue to see these younger guys develop under that type of leadership. I don't think you're going to see them go out there and add pieces that help them make the playoffs or lock in a playoff spot or advance in the second round of the playoffs or anything like that. I think if they're going to be good, it's just going to be by player development. So I think they're trending in the right direction, where they're going to be saving money, saving cap space, and then they're going to cash that in down the line. So for me, I think it's a waiting game for a lot of Flyers fans.
For sure. And I don't expect them to add a lot of pieces, but they did add a piece in this Cutter Gauthier trade, bringing in the defenseman Jamie Drysdale. Looked good in his first game last night.
Got a point
on the power play, too. So power play struggled a little bit. They think he could help it, but it is a surprise that nothing ever came out. But I cannot wait, Farzy, until the Anaheim Ducks and Cutter Gauthier come to Wells Fargo, because that's going to be a fun night. I may try to get tickets for that game, because that will be vintage Philadelphia Flyers hockey, baby. The fans will be going nuts in that game.
Will it be? I wonder if it'll be anything close to Eric Lindros coming back. It might be, because we haven't had something like this to be really pissed off about in quite some time. We've been pissed at the team. We've been pissed at upper management over the years and all that stuff. But in terms of really focusing it on one singular player, I mean, I remember Lindros' first game back, and there were guys wearing 88 Flyers jerseys, and on the back of it, they taped over it, and it said "rat bastard." I just thought that was the funniest thing. It could be along those lines with Cutter Gauthier as well. I look forward to the venom at the Wells Fargo Center for that game.
I think it will be more like when Eric Lindros played his first game in Quebec, if you remember way back, because he refused to play for the Nordiques.
Yeah.
And then when the Flyers went to Quebec, they all had pacifiers. They were dressed up like babies, all that good stuff. But
do you remember the GM's name? Do you remember the GM of the Flyers at the time?
It wasn't Bobby Clark?
Russ Farwell.
Oh, they brought in Clark to help with Eric Lindros, but he wasn't the GM yet. That's right.
Yeah, I forgot that for the longest time. And then I remember when I think they traded Lindros to the Rangers, I was going back and looking at the history of all of it, and I was just like, oh, damn. Wait, who? Because, I mean, what were we when that happened? Like 12, 13? It was insane.
Yeah. I used to go to, and then we'll move on from hockey, but I used to go.
No, wait, 10 or 11, more like it. Yeah, sorry.
We were younger because I used to go, me and my cousins, my mom would drop us off at the Coliseum in Voorhees, and you would wait in the parking lot, and the players would show up in their cars for practice, and they didn't have it roped off like they do now. They would literally just park their cars. We knew every single Flyers car. So, oh, here comes Brindamore. Oh, here comes Lindros. Here comes Bundy. And we would get autographs, especially on Martin Luther King Day, because school was always closed.
Oh, wow.
And the Flyers usually had practice, and we would just get dropped off there, freezing our asses off, getting hockey autographs, man. Those were fun times. Those were fun times. But let's talk about some football. Still football season. Before we get into the Eagles, some big news over the last 24 hours. A lot of coaches moving on, losing their jobs. Arthur Smith, I expected that one in Atlanta. But the one that surprised me, Mike Vrabel getting let go in Tennessee, and now Bill Belichick, the legend, quote-unquote, parting ways in New England. Do you see Vrabel maybe going to New England? That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I do see it. The only thing is, if you're Mike Vrabel, you've been looking for a steady, consistent quarterback for a long time, and I don't really think you have that, obviously, right now in New England. So that might be something that is like, look, I know if I'm Mike Vrabel, I'm like, look, I know I can put a good defense together on the field. I know I got the right mindset. I know I can pull from a lot of guys in the same system that Bill Belichick was running up here. I know I can have a lot of success in that regard. I need that quarterback. And maybe the Chargers are more desirable because you already have Justin Herbert there ready to play, ready to fire. But it would be, and it would almost make too much sense for Bob Kraft to say, look, you're one of us. You tell us the number. We make it happen. And then maybe Mike Vrabel goes back to New England. It is the perfect story, all that, blah, blah, blah. But if you're Vrabel, you've paid your dues in Tennessee. You haven't had a long sustained success with the same quarterback. Ryan Tannehill obviously had some good years there. They had some other guys fizzle out. But I think you're going to want that young guy that you can grow with and build a defense for. And that might be more along the lines of the LA Chargers. If you're looking for a storybook, the perfect storybook, though, is that he ends up in New England.
Now, you mentioned the LA Chargers. And before you came on the show, I was talking about Bill Belichick and potential landing spots for him. And the LA Chargers are a team I could see Belichick wanting to go to. Same reason you just gave for Vrabel. Does Belichick want to go to a team that doesn't have a good young quarterback? Because obviously one of the names that's popping up a lot when you hear Bill Belichick's name is the Washington Commanders. Josh Harris, as we know well, as the owner of the Sixers, would love to make a splash like that and bring in Belichick. But does he have faith that Sam Howell is the guy? So where do you see Belichick going?
When you're hiring Bill Belichick, you're hiring a guy that is going to take over everything. That is, I think, what Josh Harris ultimately wants, because you're going to have a guy with final say over everything. Like here in Philadelphia, we have to look at our head coach as employee number 3. When you look at, there's employee number 2 is Howie Roseman. Employee number 1 is Howie Roseman. Employee number 2 is maybe the analytics department, and then it's the head coach. But when you bring in Bill Belichick, you're bringing in the boss. You're bringing in a guy that is going to have his hands on everything. And I know there was a report out of New England that he was willing to take less responsibility if it meant he would stay on as the head coach. And I didn't think that ever made sense for him. That was I think a no pun intended, a Hail Mary of an attempt to stay in New England. But I see wherever he goes, him having final say. It'll be similar to Andy Reid going to the Chiefs and saying, I need to delegate a little bit more. And then he ended up just taking over anyway. When it comes to Bill Belichick, though, as far as where he could end up, I think Washington, you go again to that blank check mentality from a guy like Josh Harris. You change the outlook of your franchise, and maybe Sam Howell's not that guy. A lot of turnovers, obviously, for a young quarterback. A 5th round pick? I think it's another guy you're going to have to go after or another position you're going to have to go after to improve right out of the gate. The most sense that it makes is Bill Belichick going somewhere where you do have that young quarterback that you can at least have faith in. The obvious, as you said, you're looking at the Chargers with Justin Herbert, and maybe you're able to go in there and put in the defense. All the things I said about Mike Vrabel, you could say about Bill Belichick, with the exception of he's the guy that's going to have final say over everything. The thing that Mike Vrabel is going to want is something along those lines as well, considering the GM hire that they had with the Texans last year with the Titans last year wasn't a guy that he wanted by all accounts. I think you're going to be looking for guys to have their hands and their fingerprints on everything. I think the most sense, he doesn't need money, but when it comes to Bill Belichick and where he could end up, I think it would be between the Washington Commanders and the LA Chargers.
One question that keeps getting floated, people keep asking me on Instagram, I see it all over talk radio, is if the Philadelphia Eagles move on from Nick Sirianni, and we'll get whether or not we think that's going to happen. We'll get into that. Would you have any interest in a guy like Bill Belichick? Because honestly, I wouldn't. As great as Belichick has been, I don't think the Patriot way works anymore, especially without Tom Brady as your unquestioned leader of the team.
I would. I would want Bill Belichick here in a heartbeat. And let's think about this again. Let me go back to the analogy of employee numbers here, okay? It's not, let's put it this way. It's not going to happen. Bill Belichick is never going to be the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. So let me just, now that that's out of the way, and now we're just entertaining the anything can happen world. Bill Belichick coming here, it's not Howie Roseman, it's not Jeffrey Lurie, it's Bill Belichick. No longer are we saying, man, is it Nick Sirianni's real philosophy to throw the ball this much? Is it this defensive philosophy of Jeffrey Lurie in the analytics department? Is it really their philosophy to do what they're doing here? Or is it more a philosophy of, Jonathan Gannon or Sean Desai or Matt Patricia? No, it's Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick, if he had Jalen Hurts in New England, would probably be a lot better in New England over the last couple of years without Tom Brady. So I think he would love to coach Jalen Hurts, but it's never happening. You need a steady, consistent, good young quarterback. Jalen Hurts is that. I think he has been horribly coached this year. I think he has been coached and made some terrible decisions based on the philosophy and game plan installed. But for me, I think Bill Belichick would have success here. I just don't think Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie would ever knock on that door and give up power that they have, quite frankly, especially Howie Roseman over the last 5-6 years, really earned. I mean, people just gloss over the idea now of, two different quarterbacks, two different head coaches, and getting to 2 Super Bowls. That's insane. That doesn't happen. And yet the Eagles did. Howie Roseman did it, winning one of those Super Bowls, obviously. When it comes to rescinding power, when it comes to giving it up, I don't think they're going to do that, even if it is for Bill Belichick.
You don't think Bill Belichick and Julian Lurie would get along talking about analytics in his office?
The only on that note, to make it more personal like that, I think there is a little curiosity there, Jeffrey Lurie, because let's not forget the history here. And you and I, as fellow billionaires, we can identify with Jeffrey Lurie and Robert Kraft. They're having a little worry. They're having a little concern here. Jeffrey Lurie, think about this. Bob Kraft's done with his toy, and then Jeffrey Lurie steals it, and he goes on to have fun with that toy. That would be a nice little needle, a nice little poking from Jeffrey Lurie to Robert Kraft. If he goes, oh, you know what? All right, you're done with this Bill Belichick guy. Now I take him. I'll have, 5 years with him. Maybe I'll win a couple of Super Bowls. You were done with him. I'll show you can still win with him as long as you gave him that good quarterback. And that's what you gave him here in Philadelphia. That is in the back of my mind, that maybe Lurie would do it just to mess with Robert Kraft. They both bid on the Patriots. Let's not forget that.
They did. And Lurie, I know people get frustrated and we're making jokes. Runs a great organization. He really does. I'm frustrated right now with the team the way it is, but you look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, you can't deny under Jeffrey Lurie, they've had a lot of success. And we're talking about Bill Belichick, an absolute legend, like him or not. Another coach who's an absolute legend, like him or not, walked away yesterday, and that's Nick Saban retiring from coaching in college football. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't follow college football as like some other people do, but it was surprising to see, especially after taking the L to Michigan. I thought he'd at least come back from one more. So when that came up, it looked, I don't know, man, it's just been a weird year with people stepping away. Pete Carroll obviously being thrown in the mix there. It's the Saban thing was surprising only because I didn't think he would go out. Not necessarily not a winner, but I thought he would try to get a little bit closer, maybe at least in that national championship game one more time. And stepping away now is surprising. But damn, what one hell of a resume. I know as a head coach in the NFL, not so great. As an assistant in the NFL, definitely turned some heads, earned some jobs there, obviously at the college level, LSU and Bama most notably. It was surprising simply because I thought he would hang on for a couple more years trying to pad that resume even more. And let's face it, I applaud him for doing it. Guys that can step away maybe a little bit earlier than some people would anticipate because of that fiery competitive edge that you always have. I give him a lot of credit. Maybe he's going to kick his feet up now. Maybe he's just going to enjoy retirement, and that'll be it. But yeah, to answer your question, I was surprised he stepped away when he did.
Yeah, I think he looked at the landscape of college football with all the changes and the NIL and the transfer portal and said, look, I'm done. I've had my success. And you talk about that fiery personality. Another coach, fiery personality, even though he's gotten up there in years, was Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll relieved of his duties in Seattle, which was a little bit of a surprise for me as well, especially after Seattle kind of overperformed the last couple of seasons with Geno Smith as their quarterback. But looks like they're going in a different direction as well. Did that one surprise you, Pete Carroll?
It did. For the same reasons. When you talk about a Seattle team that might have been trending in the right direction, not for a Super Bowl by any means. But I think you also look at a guy that doesn't necessarily see them being on the a huge upswing. They had some luck. They had a guy like Geno Smith, kind of revitalize his career out there in Seattle. The whole fallout of the Russell Wilson deal, all that. I was surprised in that, again, you would look for him to go out more, not on top, but closer to that, a lot more competitive than what we have seen in recent years with Seattle, and maybe he just wasn't willing to throw a couple of more years at it to see if that was the direction. You're already going through that change. He didn't want to go through the idea of grooming a younger quarterback if that's the direction they go in the draft coming up. I was only surprised by, again, these guys have been winners throughout their careers. You would expect them to go out more on a winning note than a team, barely around 500 as the season went on. Also, I never knew he took his shirt off with DK Metcalf in the draft room. I did not know that happened. That came out on my feed yesterday. DK Metcalf went to. Did you know that? I didn't know that. DK Metcalf goes into his interview at the combine with his shirt off, and Pete Carroll's like, hell yeah, takes his shirt off too and shakes his hand. And then they give a little glare at the camera like, you got that, right? I'm hilarious. Anyway, but yeah, hey, best of luck if retirement is what they do. If he's supposed to go in some kind of he's going to be some kind of conciliary to the Seahawks now. We'll see if that actually happens.
Yeah, I saw some conflicting reports that he was, and then there were some reports that he wasn't going to have a role with the team. So we will see. But while we're talking about all these coaching changes, one of the big questions that has come up over the last few weeks for the Philadelphia Eagles is if they go down to Tampa and they get embarrassed by the Bucs, or even if they beat the Bucs and then go and get embarrassed by the 49ers or the Cowboys in the divisional round, could Nick Sirianni's job be in jeopardy? And I will tell you, Farzy, before the Giants game, I thought that would be a severe overreaction. I didn't think that you could fire a guy who has led your team to the playoffs in his first 3 seasons as coach, first time ever in franchise history, a guy coming off a Super Bowl loss. I thought he's earned another shot. But then I saw what they just did in the final game of the regular season against the Giants, and I'm starting to rethink my whole position on this. And I think if they do lay an egg in Tampa or get completely embarrassed in the divisional round by the Cowboys or the 49ers, that Lurie will consider making a change to the head coaching position. What is your position on that?
You and I were in that same boat. I thought it was a piping hot take to say, oh, Nick Sirianni, at the end of the year, he's done. Then you saw the Giants game. You heard about how he was trying to really motivate the team before the game and telling them how important this game was, that, yeah, it might not impact our standings, but we have to play well. Everything we got to focus on right now is internal. We can't worry about the Commanders, can't worry about the Cowboys. Well, you can't help but look at the score, I'm sure, at MetLife Stadium and see that the Commanders were making a game of it in the first half. And with that motivation from the coach, the motivation of potentially winning the division, hosting a playoff game, you mean to tell me that's how you got up? That's as high as you could get up with those motivating factors? I don't think so. So yes, now I think. And then listening to the players in the locker room afterwards as well, they're looking at Nick Sirianni, what it seems like, especially when you think about Hassan Reddick's quotes from last week. This coach was neutered of authority, essentially. I think it was to use Hassan Reddick's words, The coaching change that they made with their defensive coordinator came from the, quote, higher-ups. Did it come from the coach? Did it come from Nick Sirianni? That's not what coach wanted to do. That's what the, quote, higher-ups wanted to do. So if you're a player, how are you looking at Nick Sirianni as if he is any type of authority figure? How are you doing that? That did not help their cause. The front office doing what they did with Sean Desai did not help their cause in making Nick Sirianni look like somebody who actually had, some semblance of power. So listening to Dallas Goedert's quotes after the game, I know he tried to walk it back, but the Eagles, I think this is what it comes down to. Nick Sirianni is coaching for his job. Now, that doesn't mean they have to win for him to keep his job. If the Eagles get annihilated, if they can't handle the blitz from Todd Bowles better than what they did against Wink Martindale, for instance, in Week 18 against the Giants, and they get annihilated, I think you're cleaning house. If it's a game, or even if the Eagles win one playoff game, I think you are changing coordinators in the offseason. Matt Patricia has a shot at staying on, with the philosophy being give him a full year to do exactly what he wants to do and see how it goes. But then I think Brian Johnson is going to be a quarterback's coach somewhere else, or an offensive assistant somewhere else, and not with the Philadelphia Eagles.
And you mentioned Brian Johnson. It gets reported that the Carolina Panthers want to interview him for their head coaching position. And I was on, you remember Butch? Little Butch from the Eagles sidelines. I used to work with Butchie. So he had me on. He was hosting a radio show down the shore.
Did you say little Butch?
Well, he's not that little, but not the big Butch, the son Butch. So he had me on his radio show last night, and we were talking about the Carolina Panthers and how could they be interested in Brian Johnson. And he asked about the Rooney Rule and all that. But here's my position on it. I don't think any good head coaching candidate is going to want to coach for Dave Tepper as their owner. The Carolina Panthers organization is a disaster. So you may see them hiring a guy like Brian Johnson, because I don't think if I'm Bill Belichick or I'm Mike Vrabel or I'm one of these highly touted coordinators, I'm not going to Carolina. That place is an absolute mess. So could you see Brian Johnson actually getting a head coaching job?
No. I love your theory. I agree. I love your theory. It makes sense. Like this franchise is so dumb that they could do it. I'll add to it with this. Yes, they are that dumb. Yes, no one else really wants that job. And B, Brian Johnson would absolutely want that job in a similar way that Nick Sirianni would want the Eagles job. And that has nothing to do with Jalen Hurts. That just has to do with the idea of, wait, hold on a second. Nick Sirianni, before he was hired here, was an offensive coordinator under an offensive-minded head coach. I know the Eagles have the offensive coordinator call plays under an offensive-minded head coach, but that's rare. So what was it that Nick Sirianni did so well? The answer to that is he interviewed well, seems like a nice guy, and seems like a guy we can control. This is the best possible job that Nick Sirianni could have got. Good for him. Took advantage of an opportunity. I applaud him for it. Brian Johnson will be walking into that dumpster fire that probably not many people are going to want, and he wouldn't be that expensive. Maybe that is the job that would line up well for him. So there. Now all of a sudden we come up with 3 different things that would actually make sense for Brian Johnson to go there. I still don't think it happens. I think there's going to be somebody better, somebody more accomplished that will want that job, and somebody that the Carolina Panthers are really going to want. I don't know who that is, but I have a hard time believing that it is Brian Johnson.
Yeah, even as bad as the Carolina Panthers organization is, there's only 32 NFL head coaching jobs. So take one if you can get it, I guess. But let's look forward to this Monday night matchup, wild card matchup. Philadelphia Eagles, Tampa Bay Bucks. It's the playoffs. We've waited all year for this, and the vibes are just terrible. But you look at this Bucks defense. Let's look at some of these matchups. And the Bucks defense is number 5 in the NFL against the run. They're only giving up 95 yards a game. But you go back to week 3, and the Philadelphia Eagles put up over 200 yards on the ground. They ran the ball 40 times in that game, averaged 5 yards per carry. Do you see this Philadelphia Eagles team coming out and trying to establish the run again on Monday night, because it worked so damn well back in week 3?
What was the what's the weather supposed to be like on Monday night? Supposed to be rainy and stuff in Tampa?
Yep, and we got our Ringo Island in the chat who lives in Tampa saying it's supposed to be really rainy. That's what they're reporting down there. So
the Eagles will throw the football 45 times.
That would make sense, wouldn't it? That would make sense.
Almost too much sense. For me, these are two totally different teams than the teams that saw each other in week 3 of this season. And if you remember, the Eagles kind of started slow in that game, then they came on strong towards the end. Third quarter, they put up some points. I think it was they started to really establish that run and take control. When you're up 25-11, you could run the football a little bit. I listened to Brian Johnson yesterday, and he was talking about how this Eagles offense needs to get first downs. What do you need to do to improve and start fast? He said, we got to rack up the first downs. And I'm like, oh yeah, first downs are good. Tell me more, please. How about getting 3 yards on first down? Throwing the football, trying to get a couple more yards, setting up at least at the worst case scenario, tush push. If you don't get the 3rd and 2, whatever the case might be, you have the Pro Football Focus just ranked the Eagles the #1 offensive line in football. What are you doing? Why are you having these guys at the end of the season try to hold pass blocks for 5-6 seconds? Why are you doing that? Give these guys a break for a second here. I love the idea that the Eagles play Monday night because it does give them one more day, and I think everyone on the Eagles roster absolutely without question needs that. But I wish I could say that they're going to commit to the run after this. But literally for 18 weeks, we talked about that. And then the Eagles have to be reminded in the second half of games that they have a really good run game. Why is that? Well, because that's the overall philosophy of this franchise. And we talk about it every week with Seth Joyner, where he said it's just not what they want to do. I'm not going to be fooled again by this Eagles team. Oh, hey, look, this looks like a great matchup to run the football. And they come out throwing. They come out, maybe they run the football 1 or 2 times, and then they come out with an empty backfield. They'll let you know again, they're not going to run the football. It just, to me, lacks so much common sense. And if you're lacking that much common sense, it's because you have a unjustified amount of confidence. Arrogance is what it's called. Arrogance about the way you want to win football games. It's not the way you should win a football game. Overall, yeah, you're probably going to win more games. You throw the ball a bunch. But when it comes to matchups, when it comes to elements of an outdoor game like this one here against the Bucs, when it comes to they're the 3rd highest blitzing team in the NFL, the Buccaneers. When it comes to facing a team like that, you're going to continue to throw the football? Doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you also look at the snaps that these guys have had, the age a lot of the guys on the offensive line as well. As much as I want to be Paulie pom-poms and say they're going to establish that run in this game, I just can't say it with any amount of confidence. So to answer your question, no, I don't see them establishing the run in this football game. I see them doing what they always do, which is, oh yeah, that's right. In the third quarter, we can run the football. Why weren't we doing that before? Oh, silly us. That's the way I see it happening, unfortunately.
Now, I will say this before I let you run. I do want to see them establish the run. They did have a lot of success in week 3, but you look at that Bucs defense, number 5 against the run, number 29 against the pass. So the Eagles won't have a hard time convincing themselves that, hey, we should throw the ball against this team. And you talk about them blitzing a lot. They blitzed Hurts 75% of his dropbacks in week 3. Mm-hmm. But the Eagles did have some success. They threw for 270 yards in that game. He had about a 63% completion rate against the blitz, did throw 2 interceptions, but we will see. I agree with you. The main reason I want to see them establish the run is just to keep the defense on the damn sidelines because they're not good enough. Even against Baker Mayfield, I worry about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and even their running back Rashad White has made some plays this year. So we will see. But Farzy, I appreciate you joining the show. I will see you on Monday night for our pregame show leading into hopefully not the last game of the year. I'm hoping we get one more after this at least. But I will see you on Monday night. And guys, if you want to check out Farzy, he has the Farzy Show every day, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7, right here on the JAKIB Sports Network. I appreciate you, my brother.
Always a pleasure, my friend. I will see you down there Monday night. And yes, hopefully we do get one more. Hopefully they shock the world, baby.
Monday. Thanks, Farzy.
Monday. All right, buddy. I'll see you.
My man Farzy. Always love our Thursdays with Farzy. He does a great job keeping it real. But like we started the show, guys, I mean, I have some of you on Instagram coming at me because I'm not being overly positive about this team. I'm not being negative just for the sake of being negative. This is reality. I can't just come up here and be a cheerleader every single week. Look, I tried to be positive after the San Francisco 49ers game. I tried to say, okay, look, they were coming off of a tough stretch. It was a bad spot for them. They had just played all those snaps against the Buffalo Bills. Tried to be positive. Then they went down to Dallas and got dominated in Dallas. I still tried to be positive. Then they let Drew Lock, a backup quarterback, go 92 yards against them in under 2 minutes. Was still trying to be positive. Then they almost blew the game to the New York Giants in Week 16. Then they let Jonathan Gannon come in here and the bad Arizona Cardinals team and embarrass your defense again. Then they come out and lay an absolute egg in Week 18. I can't just be positive for the sake of being positive. You have to trust your eyes sometimes. And this team doesn't look good right now. But with all that said, I will try to be positive tomorrow on the show because I do think, as crazy as it sounds, I do think the Eagles are going to win on Monday night. And we will break down all the matchups tomorrow right here on the Philly Sports Power Hour for our Football Friday. We'll also take a look around the NFL. I want to talk about some of these others games. I'll give you my picks in those other games tomorrow. But like we end every Philly Sports Power Hour with a little Today in Sports history. Well, on January 11th, 1946, Philadelphia, homegrown Bert Bell became the second commissioner of the NFL. And he said, we're not keeping the NFL headquarters in Chicago. We're moving them to my hometown, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Bert Bell was a player. He was a coach, went to high school at Haverford. He was an assistant coach at Penn, an assistant coach at Temple, became the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, owned the Philadelphia Eagles, and then he became the commissioner from 1946 to 1959 and said, I'm moving the NFL headquarters to my hometown. And that happened January 11th, 1946. Philadelphia's own Bert Bell. But guys, appreciate all of you spending this hour with me. Hit that like button, hit that share button on your way out. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at Bill Colarulo, on Instagram, on TikTok, right here on YouTube. You could find me, Bill Colarulo, posting daily content multiple times a day about our Philadelphia Eagles. The last 2 days, I did a breakdown comparing the 2022 offense to the 2023 offense, the 2022 defense to the 2023 defense. So some interesting things there. Check it out. Shoot me some DMs. Let me know what things you want to talk about here on the show. Appreciate everybody. As always, go Birds.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.